because of what it is that I do and who I am, I have to have 24/7 protection. My security team is a little bit more different than everybody else's security team. It's not just your regular degular, rent-a-cop or security. I mean, these guys are advanced and they're specially trained, When I was younger, I was into technology. Technology was my escape from real life and what was going on with my real life at the time. It was a way for me to not only express myself, but it was a way for me to just hide from everything. Coming from where I'm coming from, you don't really make it out, right? It's all, street politics, gang influence, and the only two things you could really do is either, join, a gang or leave. And it was kind of hard for me not to get into street politics or to steer in that direction because everybody that I knew, including my family, they were involved in it. So I looked for an outlet, and I've always been fascinated with technology. And I really got into technology when I found this thing called a Game Shark. The Game Shark is a hacking tool to basically help you cheat in video games. And the reason why I was so drawn to this is because my family thought if they were to get me like these gaming consoles that I would stay out of the streets, but it was kind of like a mixture of both. I would be in the streets and, and play my games. But so I didn't like losing, obviously no one does, but I had found this Game Shark and I thought it was really fascinating because with this specific version of Game Shark, it actually allowed you to find your own cheat codes within the video game. And I remember when I used to put in the Game Shark, I just used to sit there and watch the graphics and how cool it was. And there was the graphics of a 8-bit shark in the water, and then you hear the theme song, and then a menu pops up and it says, the library of video games that it has where you can, cheat on. And the cool thing about this was that it allowed you to find your own cheats, and I found it very fascinating because of how it worked. And the way it worked, basically, it was using, hexadecimal, and you were able to write specific hex codes onto, the video game in which you were playing to then basically create your own cheat codes. And I remember I was so fascinated by it because of that, but also it was my escape route. My cousin, who is probably in his mid 40s, he was the one that introduced me a lot to the internet side of things. He introduced me to IRC, which is Internet Relay Chat, which a lot of people didn't really know about. And IRC is a form of communication. It's where you can go. Well, basically, it's a platform where you can go on and talk to other people and communicate through different channels, subtext channels, and so on. And so he introduced me to IRC, and at the time he was known as a hobbyist tinker. Hobbyist tinker is someone who, gets something, breaks it, tries to put it back together, or who tries to make something else out of it. A form of hardware hacking, kind of like reverse engineering. That was his thing. And so I remember he was a part of a couple forum boards online. At the time, there was a forum called BHF, which stood for Best Hacker Forum, which was all in Russian. And, I didn't know Russian at the time. So in order for me to understand and communicate with people on this forum, I would use Google Translate. Another forum was called Altanin, which was an introduction to hacking and Blackhat art. Blackhat art basically is a form of different methodology to use hacking for personal gain. As in, like, if you wanted to hack credentials, or if you wanted to use whatever knowledge was on this forum to basically gain whatever it was out of it. He was also part of another forum called Carter's World, which was on the Tor network. And at this time, a lot of people didn't know about Tor. Tor was kind of, you would have to have known someone in that circle to actually know about Tor. And till this day, still people don't know about Tor. And it was a forum based off of Blackhat art. So anyways, I told my cousin, and I was like explaining to him about this Game Shark that I was so fascinated with, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And my cousin had a little bit of dark humor, so certain things he would say, it was just kind of outlandish. But he told me that he had no idea what it was that I was talking about, but he might know people or someone that can help. So he introduced me to a core group of individuals, probably about 20 to 21 people on this IRC server, in this IRC channel. And I would ask questions. And at the time, hacking really wasn't such a big thing. If you really wanted to learn anything about hacking, the place to be would be IRC, right? If you wanted to find more information about hacking, or if you wanted to find a possible mentor, IRC was the place that you would want to be. Now, not so much, but back then, that's where that's where everything was. And at this time, there was a couple hacking channels, such as Geek Issues, which spoke about general IT and pen testing, and another one called the 2600 Club, which there's a lot of history with that, but focused on other things. And you had different individuals coming out of this 2600 Club because of what it was. But so I would ask these questions, and I would learn more and more and more. And I asked specific questions in regards to this Game Shark. And, I would get replies back from people who were messaging within the IRC channel. And I noticed that there was this one individual, we'll call him AG. AG was probably one of the most smartest individuals, besides two more that I end up meeting later on down the life. One is by the name of KMS, and another one is an individual by the name of Trick, who was part of a group called Team Poison. And KMS was part of a group called HTP. Unfortunately, both of them are no longer here. They passed away. But going back to AG, and at this time, being a part of these IRC channels, they wouldn't use their real handles. They wouldn't use their real names. They would use, either acronym, or they would use single letters. And that was a form of OPSEC, which is operational security, which is what we have in place for individuals who try to gain or want information on us in general. And we have certain things in place online that would basically, give them disinformation. Basically, it's leading by disinformation and misinformation campaigns. And, sometimes we would use real photos with a fake name. Sometimes we would use a real name with fake photos. It really just depended. And it was just a mixture of both. But that's operational security. So I would ask these questions, and I've noticed that this individual AG, every time when he spoke in this IRC channel, that the IRC channel would stop. People wouldn't reply. It was like they waited for him to say something specific or to finish up whatever he was saying, and then it would just keep going.
My dad was giving me a hard time about not watching the news enough, so naturally I gave him a hard time right back. I told him most of what we're shown is designed to alarm us, not inform us. And that's why I asked Ground News to sponsor my channel. Ground News is an app and website that helps you form your own opinions by showing you every article published on any story worldwide. My favorite part is how it breaks down each news source's political bias, reliability, and even ownership, so you can actually see where your information is coming from. Let me show you how it works. Here's a story about the Palisades fires in Los Angeles. Ground news shows that 13 outlets covered it, most leaning slightly right. You can instantly see who owns these outlets, how reliable they are, and how differently they frame the same event. Some headlines focus on firefighter decisions, others on weather and risk. Same story told through two very different lenses. I also like their blind spot feed. It highlights stories that are covered heavily by one side but ignored by the other. It's a simple way to step outside your own echo chamber. So if you're tired of being told what to think, check them out at ground.news/SWU. You'll get 40% off their Vantage plan, and by subscribing or even gifting it to someone, you're supporting independent thinking and this channel directly. Again, that's ground.news/SWU. Thank you for watching.
So I asked this individual by the name of AG about this Game Shark, and I asked him, how can I get involved in doing what this Game Shark was doing? And he replied back, and at the time there was these commands to notify you, which is called pinging, which would be, depends on how you had set up the server or whatever it was, but you would get pinged. And he messaged me, he replied back and he said, well, if you want to know, what the Game Shark is doing, you want to get into programming and coding. But if you want to actually do what the Game Shark is doing, which is basically finding vulnerabilities or writing hexadecimal to whatever it was and so on, then you will want to get into more of the hacking. But if you're going to learn about that, then you want to learn how to basically stay hidden from online and how to make sure that no one knows who you are or leave any type of trail. So that's what I did. I learned networking. Networking was the fundamentals, basically, was my foundation. From networking and learning how, the networks communicate to more of a TCP/IP, more of different protocols, more of the OSI model and so on. From there, I learned maldev. Maldev is malware development, and the reason why I got into malware development was because that group of individuals that were on this IRC server, they were into obtaining PII, which is personal identifiable information. And the reason why they wanted to obtain this information is because they wanted to utilize this information for whatever it was, right? And so I got into malware development, and there was a couple individuals in this IRC channel that ended up being really well known later on for developing malware for ATMs and whatever it was. So I ended up getting techniques off of these individuals, and I learned a lot of different ways how to do certain things and implement it inside malware and so on. From there, I learned web exploitation. And at the time, hacking, again, wasn't really such a big thing. So web exploitation was kind of new in a way, right? And one day, the IRC channel, it just died out. And me and my cousin really didn't know why, or, and at this time, we're not really focused on why. So I remember we had, so we were doing a project, and this project, basically, we were creating something. And then the IRC channel ended up getting a notification. And then from there, I opened up the IRC channel and all this other stuff. And there was a person who posted on this IRC channel, basically posting links to news articles. And at the time, we didn't really know this individual AG or who he was or where he was from because, again, operational security. But someone in that IRC channel knew him, and they were basically putting out information saying that he got in trouble by law enforcement and so forth. And from there, we had joined a group actually we moved to XMPP, which is another form of communication. And we have joined a group on XMPP, which were the same individuals on this IRC channel, but we just moved to platforms. And at the time, XMPP, they didn't allow you to have encrypted chats with groups. They only allowed you to have single one-on-one chats. So if you wanted to message somebody, you would have to do it one-on-one if you wanted it to be encrypted. But if you wanted to talk generally, whatever it was, then you would be in the group. So I remember I got a message from an individual, we'll call him Pancho, who sent me a link to a specific forum. This specific forum was called Dark Code. Now, Dark Code was a place where we would all go and we would share information, exchange information, buy services, or whatever it was. But the authorities, the authorities basically were threatened by the platform because they named it as one of the most prolific Blackhat underground marketplaces that there ever was on the internet. English-speaking cybercrime forum, if you will. So it was part of an operation called Operation Shrouded Horizon of the FBI, Interpol, and there was sweeps, and people ended up getting in trouble and so on. But the reason why I had gotten invited was because of everything that I was doing at that specific time. I would share my vulnerabilities, I would share my exploits, I would share knowledge, and that was the thing that people liked and they respected because I would share it. I wouldn't gatekeep. Now, people gatekeep and so on, but so I got invited, and one of the really cool things about this forum called Dark Code was that it was really HQ, high quality, and there was probably about 200 to 300 members, and the way that you would do the onboarding process and the way that you would make an account is that you would have to have someone give you a link to then give you a secret key that you can use to make your account. From there, you're called Fresh Fish, which is a play off of Shawshank Redemption. And then at that point, you would have to post your Blackhat CV or, your Blackhat resume, or you'd have to say what it is that you've done or what it is that you can bring to the forum to help it grow or whatever the case was. And even then, you would still have to get vetted by, individuals who are already on the forum and also sometimes the moderators or the administrators. And at that point, now, you have, if you get accepted, now you're level 1, which you have access to the forum, but you don't have access to the forum. And it just goes on and on and on. But that's what made Dark Code really sought after. And in these times, people didn't know about this forum unless you were around that circle. And moving forward down the line, I ended up getting in trouble for hacking a specific financial institution. And, when you're actually going through, in real life, when you're actually going through it, you're not thinking about, oh, hey, like, let me just take a step back, or, you're more of like, well, let me go ahead and see what I can do to push the limit because I don't know if I would get that chance again, if that makes sense, right? So I ended up getting in trouble for hacking a specific financial institution. And I mean, I got lucky too because, the way that it happened as well. And it was my first time getting in trouble and it was a nonviolent crime. So I guess, from people that I spoke to when all this was happening, they said I got lucky because it would have been different. So I ended up getting 9 months house arrest, a couple years probation. I ended up doing cyber etiquette classes, and I was on a monitored connection. And this is kind of bittersweet because if I wouldn't have went through this process, then I wouldn't have met certain people down the line, which I'll get to in a second. And one of the things that was really aggravating when I'm going through, this house arrest process was the fact that they would just pop in and they would scrummage through your things to see if you have any devices that you weren't supposed to have, and it was just sometimes it was annoying. Not only that, but if I really wanted to use a computer or any type of device, I would have to, tell, the authoritative figure and say, hey, I need it for this or whatever the case is. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. But because I was, a teenager, I needed a system for schooling. And because it was a monitored connection, it made things a little bit more difficult, for me to do or to navigate or whatever the case was. But being who I was, I figured out a way how to bypass all that, and I figured out a way how to do certain things. And, I ended up joining a online platform. This online platform was called TinyChat. TinyChat was a place where you would go to video chat with other people across the world, and it was a place where you would just come and just hang out, I guess you can say. When I was on TinyChat, I ended up meeting some really cool individuals. One individual, his name was OG. He was really good at speaking. He was really good at social engineering. And I ended up meeting another individual, we'll call him P. He was very intelligent. And then I ended up meeting more individuals that I had known before on dark code, but I didn't know who they were until, we got to speaking, because again, you use online names, usernames, monikers, or however you want to put it. So it just comes full circle. And so I was on this platform called TinyChat, and it was kind of refreshing because no one knew who I was. It was more of a clean slate. So because I've known operational security, because the whole AG situation, I basically led by disinformation when I was on TinyChat and other platforms. And one of the things about being a part of these platforms, and especially if you're doing a student in or disinformation or OPSEC in general, is that you got to make sure that you stick with a specific story, because if not, then people get curious. And that's what happened with OG. OG was, well, he comes from the same background as I, but he was very curious in certain things. And then, when they got into, hacking and trying to manipulate the TinyChat platform by cross-site scripting and, wanting to be unbannable and banning people and so on. It was a little bit difficult for them to understand certain things. So me being me, and that's just like my nature, is when someone needs help with whatever it is, I like to assist them. So I would help them out with cross-site scripts, or I would help them out with this, that, and the other. And then OG, he always used to tell me like, hey, how did you find, my room? Because he had little rooms on TinyChat. He goes, how did you find my room? And I would tell him. Now, a lot of people on TinyChat knew I was on house arrest, but they didn't know what for. And because I knew a lot about street politics, I basically told them like, hey, I got in trouble, just street politics, right? But OG and a couple other people weren't buying it because I knew too much when it came to like the hacking side. And at this time, a lot of people didn't really know hacking in general. But that being said, I ended up meeting an individual. We'll call him Poison. Poison was a leader of something specific, and he introduced me to a group of people. And actually, this is the first time where I had gotten introduced to a group called Anonymous. Now, Anonymous is more, how do I say it? So Anonymous is like my stepping stone. It's like my foot in the door, which is why I have them here, because it tells a story. And again, everything on my body, I tell a story. But I have a black hat here and a clown for all the black hat stuff, and then I have lols around here and so on. But so Anonymous to me was a stepping stone. Later on, I ended up figuring out that Anonymous wasn't really anonymous, which was what they were claiming. And being a part of this how do I say it? Being a part of this group of individuals who wanted to do certain things, they didn't really possess specific knowledge. And that was the thing with Anonymous too. It was that a lot of the things that they did, they didn't really even do. And that was kind of aggravating, because at this time, media outlets and news outlets, they wanted to capture the big story. So anything having to do with internet technology or hacking in general, they would just label it anonymous. And people who actually did, the work for whatever it was would get in trouble and feel some type of way. Right. And when I say in trouble, I meant like they would antagonize these people, and then, they would get in trouble by that. But also, they would feel some type of way, as in anger or whatever it was. So I ended up meeting this individual who introduced me to a group of people who claimed Anonymous and so on. Now, Anonymous isn't a group. It's an idea. Anonymous is an idea that other people share the same idea that want to make a statement for that idea, if that makes sense. As long as you followed what it was, anybody can be a part of it. There was really no hierarchy. There was no initiation. There was no nothing. But I will say that if you had any technical application, or if you had any access to specific tools, such as at the time was Jay's Booter, Giga Blaster, Thor's Hammer, Loic, Hoek, which is a high orbit ion cannon, and so on. But these stress testing applications, then you were the one who was leading whatever it was that you wanted these other people to do, because you felt strongly, or however you want to put it. And so I ended up being a part of this chat where people were doing certain things and who were claiming Anonymous. And one of the things with this is that I felt a specific type of way, because I had felt that people who were a part of this group, or people who were a part of this idea called Anonymous, they didn't really want to do specific things that I wanted to do. And the whole point of being a part of a group, or being a part of an idea, is to execute the idea. These people didn't want to do that. They only wanted to do certain things. But me, I wanted to, hack governments. I wanted to do anything political. I wanted, basically whatever it was, I wanted to do it. And coming from where I'm coming from, there was really no fear of like, oh, okay, well, if I get in trouble, then, that's, whatever it was. Because coming where I'm coming from, there's a lot of gang violence, gang influence. And, that was the only thing that we knew, was just getting in trouble. And so they didn't want to do specific things. And at this time, I was just like, all right, well, this is kind of lame. But before all that happened, there was a couple operations that we did. One of the operations that we did do was we uncovered child predators that were hiding behind the Tor network. And the reason why we did it was because at this time, when there was anything having to do with sexual abuse for children or whatever it was, we would package it up and we would put it into a dossier, and then from there we'd give it to law enforcement. But that was hit or miss, because law enforcement really wouldn't act on it. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. So we basically took it into our own hands, and we're like, all right, well, since we have the knowledge to do certain things, then let's go ahead and get it done. And that's what we did. So we ended up doxing and obtaining information on these individuals who we thought were hiding behind the Tor network for CSAM and CSAM, which is child sexually abusive material and child sexually explicit material. And that was one of the things that we did do. But being a part of like the whole hacking scene and community is there's this thing called the scene. The scene basically is where all the big time players were and people wanted to be a part of the scene, but also the scene was nothing but e-flexing and one-upping. That's essentially what it was. And when you claim that you were a part of the scene, then you would get flashcarded. Flashcarded was a way for us to figure out if you really knew that knowledge or not. And a lot of times people, when they would get flashcarded, they wouldn't really know specific questions, what specific answers to these questions that some people would ask if they really knew what they were talking about. And at the time, you didn't have GPT to have open on another tab to just type in what is this and it gives you the answer. At the time, you really had to know, your shit. So I was part of this operation. We did what we did, and you would think that people in the community would be happy, and they would be like, oh, that's great. But instead, it was like hackers against hackers. It was like everyone who was a part of that operation, they ended up getting doxxed. Some of them did, some of them didn't. And there was just like this whole shit show, it just didn't make any sense to me. From there, I was a part of another operation, kind of like the same thing, but for social media. Then from there, it led to more operations and more operations. After that, that's when I started having resentment towards this idea, Anonymous, or this group of people that I was affiliated with and talking to, because I understood that they didn't have specific knowledge, and it was just me doing all the work, or it was me and somebody else doing the work, and it just didn't make any sense. And so I branched out and I started talking to another individual who at this time was known as a gray hat hacktivist and who was already doing stuff behind the scenes. And I started partnering with this individual we partnered with another individual then we partnered with a group. And unfortunately, I can't really say the name of the group because of statute of limitations, but also other things. But I will say that there is a lot of internet history, and we did a lot of things that, shaped the way that the internet works today and shaped the way that mitigation's in place and so on, right? And it's kind of unfortunate because with this group I was really involved in, and I always wanted to be a part of something. That was like my thing, because growing up, it was different, but I always wanted to be a part of something. And with this group, I felt that I was a part of something, which is why I wanted to get into street politics, if that makes sense, because with street politics and joining, a gang, you have that brotherhood. So I thought I was a part of this group. And the way that this happened was someone in this group ended up being a federal informant, and this person ended up bringing down this whole group. And it was kind of like bittersweet too, because at this time I'm going through other stuff in my life, and I was homeless for about 3.5 years, and I wasn't really active like that with this group. I mean, I was, but I wasn't, because I was homeless, and it was different. But I remember I would go to these public libraries and I would use the computer. And the public libraries, you have to sign, and they give it to you for an hour. Or if no one wanted to use it, you get an extra hour or whatever it was. And I would pop in and I would say, hey, how's it going? Or a couple emojis here and there and whatnot. But I ended up hearing that the group ended up getting in trouble. And to me, it was kind of like, holy shit, like how, and, why. At the time, I didn't know that there was a federal informant, right? I didn't know that. And I mean, a lot of people didn't until it was really too late. But there was some people that had some, concerns because of certain questions that were being asked. And, so I ended up being a part of this group. It got disbanded. We ended up doing a lot of really cool things that I think, and a lot of internet history. And we shaped, the way that the internet works and mitigation and so on. But from there, I ended up joining another group after that whole situation. Again, I was only homeless for about 3.5 years, but I chose to be, and there's a reason for that. But I ended up joining another group, and with this group, it was a little bit different because it was more Blackhat. The other group that I joined was a mixture of gray hacktivists, Blackhat. So you have Blackhat, gray hat, and white hat. Blackhat is the bad actors who hack for personal gain. Gray hat is good or bad, but it depends on the target and methodology being used. Then you have white hat, which is good, and they help corporations and businesses fix vulnerabilities and so on. But the group that I was affiliated with before, they were a mixture of gray hat hacktivists and black hat, and yeah. So I ended up joining another group years down the line, and we ended up doing some other really cool stuff. And when I say cool stuff, I'm talking about like movie type stuff. You know what I mean? Like the things that you would only think would be possible if you're watching a movie, right? And with this group, kind of the same thing happened, which was there was a federal informant. But this was a little bit different because when the whole situation happened with me with the other group, it was like, I'll find another one. It kind of sucked type deal. But this one's a little bit different because the leader of this group was very knowledgeable. He taught me a lot of different methods, things that people weren't really catching on, such as NITs, which is network investigative techniques, and a way to use iframes to pull information. And this one hit home because the way that this person got me to be a part of this group was he would call me a brother. And again, I wanted to be a part of something. And, when you say certain words like, hey, brother, or, this, that, and the other, you feel some type of way. And this was a little bit different when I found out that this person ended up, being a confidential informant or a federal informant, or however you want to put it, and, doing basically the same thing. So I guess you can say I didn't learn my lesson, right? But with this group, it was kind of different compared to the other group because this group, it was more of like joking around and memes and, laughing and all these things. But moving forward, when Anonymous was a huge thing, the group that I was already affiliated with or afflicting with, there was one point where they worked to coincide, right? There was this group and then this group, Anonymous, or these people, this idea, or however you want to put it. Having that history with, again, my stepping stone, which is that idea of Anonymous, it made things a little bit more complex because I was trying to tell the group that I was affiliated with at that time, like, hey, these guys won't do this because they feel some type of way and they have rules. We didn't have rules, and that was the thing that made us dangerous. And one of the things I will say is being, part of two of the world's most dangerous hacking groups at one point in my life, and around a certain group of around a certain circle of individuals who keep track of people like me, it was kind of like that fear factor. It was kind of like that, but also I will say that just because I was labeled a black hat didn't mean that I had malintent or, It didn't mean that I would, hack for bad. It just meant that I used my skills for what it was that I believed in strongly. It just meant that I like to push ethical boundaries, right? It didn't mean that I was this bad guy and so on. But moving forward, being a part of these two groups, you start to get a reputation, either online or with law enforcement. And it made things a little bit harder for me because every time a certain situation would happen, I'd get a knock on my door, or every time, they heard about something, they would ask. And again, I'm very loyal, and I don't, especially coming from that street mentality, I don't put myself in a position knowing that I'm going to fuck up, if that makes sense, right? I mitigate it. And that's how I had thought about everything in life is I'll deal with the repercussions later. Let me just go ahead and do what I got to do, right? So at that point, when that happened with this group, same as the other one, I ended up being by myself. I ended up being a lone wolf. I ended up figuring out that being alone was a little bit more better when it came to that, and separating that life with, the online communities such as XBL, which is Xbox Live, or, whatever it was. And I started to realize that I can use my knowledge for good. And that's what I did. And some of the stuff that I did a part of these groups, if it wasn't web exploitation, it was, setting up networks, virtual private networks or proxy chains. I was basically the network guy. And because that was like my thing. And I'd find different ways to stay anonymous, if you will. If it wasn't malware, going through a specific channel for a CNC, or if it wasn't, doing something specific with specific protocols, or if it wasn't, just setting up a network for someone to use, that was my thing. Fast forward, so I ended up thinking that I can use my knowledge for good. And one of the things that I did do was I was really close with this individual. This individual had cancer. And, a lot of people actually that I know either have cancer or, passed away from cancer. And I thought that because I have the knowledge to do something, that I should do something, especially for someone that I cared about, right? So that's what I did, is I used my knowledge, and what you might think is stealing, to me, it was not really stealing. Yeah, it was stealing, but I wasn't stealing from a person. So, basically, I would, have specific credentials, and I would transfer, funds to a specific place where, I can, take out and give it to, that person I cared about for cancer treatment. And at the time, again, the way that I did that, the way that I do life is like I worry about the repercussions later. I'm not worried about all that stuff right now. It's just too much. So at the time, I was like, okay, well, I'm not really stealing from this person. I'm stealing from this institution, right? And this institution, in my eyes, was going to reimburse him. Was going to reimburse that person back if I had did whatever it was that I did, and and that was one way that I felt relieved from everything else that I did in the beginning and prior. And, having knowledge of, web exploitation, like, specific vulnerabilities or 0-day exploits, and you weaponize them, and, you start to really think of what you can do with this knowledge, right? And my whole thing, especially now, is how much data can I retain? Like, how much can I learn? How much can I utilize that for the good or whatever it is? How can I use this information to help someone or to do whatever it is that I wanted to do, right? So I ended up doing that first. After that, I ended up doing this huge hack by myself. It was actually one of the first hacks that I did when I was a lone wolf. I was used to doing hacks with a group setting, but this particular one was a little bit more personal. Someone who I was really close with in my family ended up getting in trouble for, getting prosecuted for child abuse, child sexual abuse. And at the time, I have all these thoughts going through my head. I'm trying to figure it out, like why this person did this or what was the reason behind this. And it just, I had a lot of anger and confusion. So I thought that if I took out these platforms for, CSAM and CSAM, that I would make a difference. And, I hacked a significant portion of the dark web from these platforms, but it really didn't do anything. It was more of just like, I guess it was to the people involved in these platforms or these communities, it was more of like, all right, well, you took this down, so, let's make more. And that was the thing too, is like when you take one down, more pop up. And because I took down a significant portion, more popped up, more than before. And it was very aggravating. And it was just really mentally exhausting, because it was like all that time and hours I spent making a specific framework to, correlate data, to relationship map and to do all these things. It was for nothing. And I felt very discouraged. And one of the things that I am known for in a specific circle is creating, scripts, creating Python scripts. One of the scripts that I created was a correlation mapper. Basically, it was a Python framework that if I entered a search term or a query, or, if I was looking for something, I can put in a username or a moniker or whatever it was, and it would give me details if this person had multiple accounts on these social media platforms, or if this was connected to this, to then, relationship map to, who this person was affiliated with, as in like family, to then pivot and give me more information for database intelligence. And one of the things at the time that I was using for database intelligence was a online platform called LeakSource. LeakSource was a way for us to pull information from breach data. Now you have different platforms such as WeLeakInfo, you have Dhash and so on. And now you have a platform tailored to industries from a specific person who basically had the same idea or took that idea from LeakSource to basically make their own and recall it whatever it is. And so I would use LeakSource within my framework to find out IP addresses, possible phone numbers, passwords, and then from there I would do password spraying or whatever it was. So I ended up using this platform, and I ended up finding so much information on specific individuals who were part of these platforms, as in CSAM and CSIM platforms. And I ended up working with law enforcement. I ended up working with Homeland Security, and I ended up working with third parties such as Innocent Lives Foundation and Project Halo and Operation Grayskull. It really just depends on what it was that I was doing and how I was able to help. And because of that incident with, who I was really close with, one of my family members who got in trouble for child sexual abuse, I made it my mission and my goal to uncover and figure out more about that whole society. And so I had made this platform, and at the time we didn't have artificial intelligence like we do now, or generative AI. We just had OpenCV and, there's certain things that we would use in order for us to make this framework or this platform on Python to do whatever it was that we wanted it to do. So basically, it was kind of like an AI agent. It was created to find information, to scour the internet, and to pull the information, to basically do the job. Automation, pretty much. That's what Python is. It's for automation. So is Bash. But that being said, I had made it, my mission and my goal to uncover the society who were interested in these platforms such as CSAM and CSAM. And, I had worked with a third party, and we actually uncovered a child exploitation ring. And it was kind of crazy how it happened too, because when you really start to analyze data, or when you really start to understand what it is that you're looking at and how to get this information, you really start to think and wonder, like, what else is there, or how far can you get? But sometimes you also don't want to poke the bear, right? Like if there is a child exploitation ring, or whatever it is, you don't want to poke the bear, as in like you don't know who's behind that, right? Now you have groups like 553, 821, 762, which are more for status and tailored to infants and child sexual abuse. Then you have groups that are neo-Nazi, that are more interested in violence and doing specific things, and these groups are brainwashing people on the internet and online, and changing the narrative to certain things because they want to see certain things. Some of the groups that I will say, and a lot of times, these groups are numbered because you don't want to give them that publication. But because the way things are currently, like on, platforms such as Minecraft, Roblox, Likey, TikTok, and so on, it's best to know who your kids or who you're affiliated with. A group by the name of HAL and a group by the name of Skinnerd are currently the ones that people really should look out for online, because those are the ones that are doing the recruitment for specific things. And when I helped uncover this child exploitation ring, I started to understand that, okay, well, this isn't just a specific organization part of this. This isn't just, random acts of individuals who get urges to do whatever it is to, steal children. It's more deeper. They're all grouped and so on. And working with these third parties, I end up understanding a little bit more. And that's the thing too, is like, when you want to be a vigilante and when you want to do what's right on these platforms, you get scrutinized either by the administrators or by people or whatever the case is. And it's really one of the things that I would say is probably one of the most dangerous things currently right now on the internet, besides cyberbullying and sextortion, which I'll get into in a second. There is another group. This one I can't really say the name to it, so I'll just call it X. Group X currently right now is on a specific platform, and what they're doing is they have individuals using hacking tools to exploit children for sextortion. Sextortion basically is, hey, I have something over you, such as a video or a picture, and if you don't do X, Y, Z, then I'm going to release it to the public, or I'm going to send it to your job, or I'm going to send it to your family, or whatever the case is. That's a form of sextortion, or it can be monetary. if you don't do this or whatever the case is, if you don't give me X amount of money, then I'm going to do this. And a lot of times when people are going through that situation, they're not really thinking. So they're like, oh yeah, cool. Not, oh yeah, cool. But okay, yeah, I'll do whatever it is that you want. Just don't leak this or don't leak that. And Group X was probably the first time that I ran into a predator using a specific hacking tool to do something specific. This specific hacking tool really is not that well known. But what it allowed you to do was it allowed you to hack a device to then automatically do specific commands to move lateral, to then exfiltrate data, however you want to put it. And I was very fascinated by that. And from there, now because we have artificial intelligence, generative AI, I can't think of the other one. But now that we have those, it makes things a lot more easier to do research or cliff notes or whatever the case was. So I was able to talk to the third party, and I was able to say, hey, can I have access to this program so I can reverse engineer it? Because again, before all this, in the beginning, I was network, malware development, and web exploitation. So I ended up getting access to this program. Obviously, they didn't give it to me. It was basically observant, as in like someone would have to be there with me to see what it was that I was doing, and we would have to mark down steps and so on. So I would say that the way that it was made was probably ingenious. But moving forward, when you start to uncover these groups behind these things, you start to realize, all right, well, these guys aren't as stupid. Like, these guys are following what it is that we're doing or what it is that law enforcement's doing, and they're finding ways around it. Obviously, people do that, right? But this is a little bit more different because of what it's tailored to. And just recently, I helped law enforcement capture an individual who was working for the government. And the way that this happened was this individual was very smart, especially what it was that they did. Unfortunately, I can't really say what they did because, out of respect for the family and the ongoing case. But one of the things that I will say was like this person was really smart because they used a lot of cryptocurrency, but the way that they did it in order for them to mask who they were, but at the same time, they failed at operational security. But the way that it was and how I got it from the breadcrumbs and then just the correlation and then using OSINT, which is open source intelligence, to then correlate the data and so on. I would say it was very, very smart, but they failed because they got antsy and they ended up doing something specific where we were able to figure out, okay, well, this is coming from this and pinpoint what it was. And obviously, when you're going through that situation, sometimes when you actually have that adrenaline and you're trying to find whatever it is or any type of artifacts for forensics on whatever it is, you're not really thinking about obvious things. You're thinking about for some reason, you're thinking about the most outrageous type of stuff. And you're not really thinking about what's in front of you, right? This person got in trouble for posting information or posting pictures of their child on a specific platform and videos of their child on this specific platform. And it was really disturbing. And sometimes when you have knowledge to do things, sometimes you don't want to do certain things because you don't want to know what's behind door number 2. You know what I mean? You want to know what's behind door number 1, but door number 2 is a little bit okay, all right. But if you're going to be doing, vigilante work or work with third parties or law enforcement to uncover these individuals, then, you got to do certain things you don't want to. And a lot of times when you're going through this information, sometimes you have to have access to whatever it was that they had access to, which would be a platform. And you'd have to sift through data, or you'd have to figure out what it was in context that they were talking about, because sometimes it can get misconstrued on certain platforms, not that specific platform, but I'm talking about social media, like, ClearNet social media. Now you have these individuals who use artificial intelligence to basically make themselves appear as a 14-year-old child or 16-year-old, or make them appear as something that someone would be enticing that it would be enticing to someone to be like, oh, this, that, and the other, because now you have generative AI, you have artificial intelligence, now you have certain things currently online that you can switch your face and you can do all these things. And being a part of this third party, I started to understand that there's more platforms out there, private platforms, and some platforms are worse than others. Some are tailored to babies, infants, and animals, and some are tailored to, boys. Some are tailored to a mixture, and some of them are tailored to, what's the word? Some of them are tailored to other things. We'll just say other things. And having an understanding of how these things work, especially because of what I did back in the day to now, and helping out law enforcement and third parties, you start to understand that there's a code, a specific code. And in order for you to be part of these specific platforms, they're invite only and they're premeditated, which means that if you wanted to be a part of a specific platform, you would have to have a video of yourself, and you would have to say your usernames on other platforms, other specific platforms that you're a part of, and you would have to basically premeditate of what it is that you want to do and how you want to do it. But there was some individuals that when you get this information, you start to see their facial expressions and their body language, and you start to understand like, oh shit, he's talking about it like he's too comfortable, which means that he's done it before. Right? Because sometimes when you get someone who is new to, that community, they start acting weird, or you'll pick it up. And that's why they have these filters for vetting process in order for you to be a part of these forums. And that's probably one of the scariest things. Moving forward, I would say being a part of these third parties in law enforcement, you become a specific individual, as in like you're more sought after, if that makes sense, either good or bad. And the thing with me too is that because I started off as a black hat to then go into a gray hat hacktivist, to then go back to black hat, to, it makes things a little bit more easier for me to understand, right? And because of the group I was affiliated with before, with AG, who's that individual on that IRC server that I talked about earlier, I was able to pick up a lot of knowledge and mentorship. And I was able to meet certain people, such as, an individual by the name of KMS, again, part of HTP, which is a well-known hacking group. And, he taught me different methods and methodology. And he was a very funny guy. And, unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago, to then meet another individual by the name of Trick, who was very smart, but at the same time, a threat. And Trick was part of a group called Team Poison, with, other people too, but, I won't talk about them. I can talk about Trick a little bit because I've had interactions with him, and majority of the people that I speak about, I have interactions with, right? And there was something I was after from Trick. It was a specific vulnerability for a CMS, which is a core management system. And he had a 0-day exploit for this specific CMS. And the thing with him was he wouldn't really give you any information as in like, okay, here, let me give you the exploit or give me X amount of money or whatever the case was. He'll give you like little hints of like, okay, well, look in here, or he would basically antagonize you, and he would make fun of you like, haha, you're not smart enough to look in these directions or whatever it was. And I felt some type of way, and I'm just like, okay. Now, Trick was an individual who believed in something specific, and everybody in part of that group and who was affiliated with him or afflicted with him didn't believe in the same thing, right? And he believed in it strongly because that was just his thing. But ultimately, he was a threat to the United States. Trick was very intelligent, but he wanted to use his intelligence for cyber warfare, right? Trick was probably ahead of his time besides AG and KMS and other people. And when we started to understand what it was that he believed in, we started to be like, oh no, we don't want no part of that. Like, that's not what we believe in. I would never do anything against the United States because this is my country, right? So when I ended up finding out a little bit about that, I was like, nah, I'm good. So one of the things I will say is that meeting these individuals who I just named, you start to meet other individuals a part of Underground, right? I ended up meeting a couple other individuals who are big time players and who knew certain things and so on. And because of the knowledge that I had, I started off with, again, that RSC group who were more focused on fraud, right? That was their whole thing, which is why they wanted to create banking Trojans, ATM malware. And at the time, because this is early on, again, hacking wasn't such a big thing, but this is early on. And at the time, people didn't hear about ATM malware. They didn't know what certain things were. And because I was introduced through my cousin, it made things a little bit more easier for me to understand when somebody else would talk about something, and it was just like this thing at that point. I can tell you, 16 different ways how to hack an ATM machine. I can tell you 8 different ways how to use it for fraud. I can tell you, how to for example, there's a technique that if you get a stack of dollar bills, right? Let's say you get a stack of $200 bills, right? And you boil it in water and you make a specific concoction with certain things. You start to make a purple substance, a purple liquid, and you start to realize that as you're boiling these dollar bills, that the ink is coming off of them. So you're just getting the cloth that it comes with, which is faceless. And the reason why I'm saying this is because this is a technique that a lot of people don't know about. But now, because certain ATM machines upgraded security, some of them it won't work on, right? But you'd be foolish enough to do this technique because you get in trouble. So it would be faceless dollar bills, and what you would do is you would go to a 24/7 ATM. You would go at a specific time, and the reason why you would want to go at a specific time is because it's the way that the ATM works internally, and you would use a dummy account, and obviously you're not going to use your real account, but you would use a dummy account. Either you have someone, or you got information or whatever it is, right? And you would get these dollar bills and you would put them into deposit on the ATM. From there, it has a little trap door. From there, you would hold down the ATM trap door. You'd hold it down and it would try to lift up, but it wouldn't. But it can't lift up because you're holding it down, which then will cause a malfunction on the ATM. So when you're doing that, you're causing a malfunction. And basically, this is a form of physical jamming. And from there, it would give you a prompt, and it would say, because you're in the process of depositing funds, it would say how many dollar bills or what type of dollar bill that you were depositing, and you can basically manipulate it to be like, oh, hey, I deposited like $100 bills or whatever it was, right? Just to give me an example. And from there, it would give you a receipt. When you get that receipt, you would want to go first thing in the morning to this banking branch, and you would want to say, hey, I came from work and I deposited some money, but it gave me an error. Here's the receipt for it for validation, and here's the account that I was trying to deposit in. And then from there, you give them the receipt. Now, the banking teller is not going to know about it. They're not going to know this and that. They're not going to investigate because you have a receipt and you have evidence that you were trying to deposit something, right? So at that point, they're going to give you that money in cash because you said deposit, say, oh, hey, because that happened, I just want my money, right? Like, I'm just going to go to a different bank because this is ridiculous and blah, blah, blah. Social engineering. And at that point, they'll be like, okay, cool. Like, I'll give you the money. I'll close out of the account. But by the time they actually realize what happened, they're already gone. You know what I mean? Which is, again, different methods that you pick up, either, you create or whatever the case is. And there's a couple methods in which I created, but I was working with third parties to mitigate it. And that's always been like my thing is like, if I find something that I'm interested in, I like to figure out ways to exploit it, right? And one of the things I would do is I would mess with the ATM machines. Another thing I would do would be, a form of fraud in general, which is synthetic fraud, which a lot of people don't know about, which is basically if you have a valid social security number and a valid DOB, date of birth, you can actually use that information, even if it's your child's or someone who's deceased, you can use that information to then pivot to then either open up a bank account or to get a loan, to get a vehicle, to get a place of residence or whatever it is. Kind of a form of CPN, which is credit privacy number or credit profile number, however you want to put it, scamming. But with synthetic fraud, it's a little bit different because you're using this information such as this social security number and this DOB that is validated, but you're using falsified information such as, fake addresses, fake name or whatever it is, and you're ended up getting something in return. And that's the thing currently happening right now with a lot of fraud too, is like a lot of it is synthetic scamming. And people don't really know about these things because they're not involved with certain things, right? And because I have history in certain things, I'm able to, figure out mitigation or implement whatever it is, or, however you want to put it. But that's one of the things currently that's happening right now with the whole fraud situation. Minnesota, next is probably going to be Los Angeles, and next is probably going to be Florida. You know what I mean? So, that's really, what that is. Moving forward, there is also other knowledge that we have that a lot of people don't have. One of them is Signaling System 7 protocol, or Signaling System number 7 protocol, or SS7 for short, which is how telecommunications communicate with each other, and which is how you get routing and billing and so on. And we've known about this exploit or these vulnerabilities since 2013. People now are just trying to catch up, and they're barely figuring about SS7 and what you can do. And you don't need Pegasus or Kabutos or Pegasus 2.0 or Medellin, which a lot of people don't know about yet. All you need is a phone number, right? If you have someone's phone number and you have access to an inside data broker who works at these telecommunication companies such as T-Mobile or AT&T or whoever it is, or if you have access to a specific gateway, you could pull information such as geolocation in real time. You can pull information such as messages or eavesdrop, or if you have passwords or OTPs get sent to your phone, you can intercept that with this vulnerability. And one of the things about this vulnerability is that it can't be patched. It can't be fixed because the way that everything currently works right now with mobile communications. And even if they did do that, then it would be billions and billions of dollars of infrastructure. But those type of vulnerabilities are rare. You would actually have to have someone who knows knowledge about, certain things in order for you to actually do it. But there are certain platforms on the Tor network that are legitimate, that actually have a service for this specific thing. You just got to look for it, right? Now, everybody knows about Tor and Tor network, but a lot of people don't know about I2P or, the invisible net or, how to get to it and all these things. But, that's something totally different. But what I'm trying to say is that the knowledge that we have things that you probably wouldn't even think of. We can do things that you probably think would be impossible, right? And having that background in black hat art or, malicious use, you start to have your own ideas and you come up with your own methodology and you start to create different ways how to achieve something. And one of the things that I will say is that in the next coming months, especially when, artificial intelligence is at its highest peak, there's going to be a lot of things that people are going to be like, holy shit, like what's going on? And that's one of the things with artificial intelligence currently is that you have people who are neophytes or novice users or, people who are barely getting into internet technology or hacking in general, who use artificial intelligence like GPT to create certain things, to do certain things. And that's the thing with AI currently is that it's dangerous because of that, right? Someone that doesn't have 16 years of knowledge can create something to do something specific in an hour to 15 minutes to whatever it is to actually perfect it, right? And the way that everything is going currently, especially with all these, exploits having to do with these huge corporations and these 0-day vectors and these negative O-day and so on, and you start to really realize where everything is going. Then you have these data breaches left and right. Everything pretty much every day gets breached, right? And it's not like, okay, it's kind of like that thing where going back to synthetic scamming, like, okay, well, he can steal my information, I don't care, LOL. I don't have any money in the bank or, I don't have good credit. Okay, cool. There's different ways that we can utilize that information to make it so you have good credit, right? To make it so you have something specific that that we want to gain from, or whatever the case is, and to make it in a way where we can utilize it, right? And that's what people really have to understand. It's not, I'll never be a victim to this. It's when, because now you have these novice individuals who are making these platforms from GPT or whatever, and they're just hitting everything, low-hanging fruit. It doesn't matter if you're a target or not, It's just, if you end up in the crosshairs, pretty much, right? And one of the things I've learned being a part of the underground and having the knowledge is that not all knowledge is good knowledge. You know what I mean? Sometimes you become a target. Sometimes people want the knowledge that you have, and if you don't share that knowledge, they're like, oh, okay, well, now you're a target, right? And it makes things a little bit dangerous. And because of what it is that I do and who I am, I have to have 24/7 protection. My security team is a little bit more different than everybody else's security team. It's not just your regular, rent-a-cop or security. I mean, these guys are advanced and they're specially trained, And the reason why I've had this 24/7 security is because I became a target with not just people online, but also with the whole explosion of child predators. There was situations where I've been shot at. There's been situations where I've been chased. There's been situations, and here's the thing too, like with me, I'm really big into tactical shooting. Like that's my thing, CQB and things like that. But I would be foolish enough to be like, okay, cool, let me just be by myself and just take it on. You know, that at that point, that's ego, and that's just being stupid. So why would I do that when I can have people who actually, if they were to do whatever it is, won't get in trouble for doing whatever it is, if that makes sense, right? And because I had to have 24/7 security and I have to move militant and differently, it makes things a little bit more easier for me to talk about specific things. I mean, I have relationships with, the government. I have relationships with 3-letter agencies. I have, you know what I mean? So it's like, it makes things more easier for me to be like, hey, I'm coming on this platform, which is your platform, and I'm basically just yapping, right? But the reason why is because, one, I've already got in trouble for certain things. Two, people already know me in specific ways. And three, I usually used to do things behind the shadows, right? That was my thing, was being behind the shadows and so on. But there's been a point in my life, especially with one of my family members getting charged for that specific thing, where I wanted to make a difference. And the only way I would be able to make a difference is if I come on a platform and be vulnerable. You know what I mean? And, you'd allowed me to do that, right? And based off of X amount of times, it's more relief, and I get more comfortable, and it's just like, okay, cool. Like, let me tell you a little bit about this, that, and the other. And sometimes the way that I do speak, sometimes I have to put it in terms where people can understand, because I'm so used to saying certain things and it goes over people's heads, right? And then they're like, huh? And the point of coming on these platforms is so you can educate people, and so you can tell them, hey, this is what's going on. And it's not necessarily to come on here and brag and say, oh, hey, I'm part of two of the world's most dangerous hacking groups. Oh, hey, I can do this, dude. It's not about that. It's more about, I'm saying it in a way where people need to understand that certain things you think would be impossible are possible. You know what I mean? But also to educate individuals who are trying to get into the field of internet technology or hacking or pen testing or red teaming, which is currently what I do, and make it in a way where they can understand that these things happen, right? Because you don't hear about certain things because certain media outlets don't want to put it out there and so on. You hear about just things that they want to, tell you about. But my whole thing is, the more I'm able to talk about my past experiences and my history, internet history in general, the more that you start to realize, holy shit, like these things I've heard about, or these things I didn't know can be done, or damn, like that's crazy, And again, just to reiterate, it's not to come on here and brag or whatever it is. It's just, I like to share knowledge. I like to help people. I like to mentor. I like to do things. I like to, whatever it is. I mean, that's just who I am. And going back to my past and, doing certain things where the repercussions to me were just like whatever about, I didn't care about the repercussions, or however you want to put it. You start to really ponder and wonder like what life would have been if I didn't go through these situations, if I didn't get house arrest, if I didn't met these specific individuals, if I wasn't part of these hacking groups, if I didn't meet you, you know what I mean? It goes deeper, and it's more of that serendipity effect, right? And coming onto your platform, I've said it, to you personally multiple times, that you actually care about us, and you care about what we have to say, and you care about just the general picture. Like, you're not really for, oh yeah, let me get the fame and notoriety. You know what I mean? You're more of like, tell your story, be vulnerable, let it out, and that's why I'm here. That's why, I wanted to do this. And that's why I decided to be like, all right, if I want to do something specific, as in, share knowledge, but also share knowledge and help people understand what's going on currently, then this is what I have to do. You know what I mean? And that's all I have right now.
Until next time.
Until next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Aurelio.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Very interesting.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks. When I was designing the first Soft White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.